I was watching Fareed Zakaria's broadcast on yesterday. I like Fareed. I think he's well read. He's a scholar. I can't take that from him. I'm not trying to. I just wish he wouldn't put on that red lipstick. But beyond that, he brings on some very interesting guests. And I like his analysis of the world. I don't think there's anybody in America that's as well read as Fareed Zakaria. The boy was a, Punjab boy from over yonder in India somewhere, and you can learn a lot by listening to him. I mean, people who are cerebral and love to grow intellectually will watch Fareed. He's got a great broadcast. Yesterday, he had a broadcast and he had a guest on that was discussing the decline of the American education system. And I'll tell you, you put your children in the American school system, you are actually robbing your child of an opportunity to compete globally with the systems and mechanism of education and professionalism globally. The American school system is number 22 on a list of school systems globally, and we are perhaps the most powerful nation on the planet. So let me caution you. The American school system is a failure, a great failure. But I'm not going to let you just have my witness. I'm going to let Fareed Zakaria introduce to you a very well-read, very professional guest who can explain it much better than I. Mr. Engineer, please roll that clip.
Educators around the world have been waiting with bated breath for 3 years, and they will be able to exhale on Tuesday. That's when the latest round of PISA scores come out. Those are the global tests of 15-year-olds conducted by the OECD. They tell countries where their kids rank against others. And Asian nations have consistently outranked the United States in secondary education, math, science, and reading. So what is the East's special sauce? What can we learn from nations that consistently excel in education? Well, Teru Clavel knows firsthand. She's an American, but when work brought her family to Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Shanghai, she put the kids in local public schools there. Now they're back in New York, and Teru has written a terrific book about what she learned from watching her kids learn. The book is called World Class: One Mother's Journey Halfway Around the Globe in Search of the Best Education for Her Children. Pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much, Fareed.
Why is it that these schools, these are public schools in Hong Kong and Shanghai, why are they teaching so well?
I say the level of learning expectation is so much higher. Everybody has a can-do mindset. And yes, learning is challenging, but through overcoming those challenges, you gain that resiliency and the motivation to continue to learn and push yourself. So that's a very, very big difference.
You also talk about a really important thing. Again, these are public schools, and what you came back to the States and you were so struck by the wide disparities in funding. The best suburban schools might do very well, but the places where the poorest kids are, which need more attention, actually get less funding here because, of course, funding is for schools is through property taxes. So, and you don't see any of that in Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Japan. All teachers were paid the same. They all had the same resources.
They really do everything they can to fight any kind of inequity. So there are examples where we talk about in the United States, we want the best teachers, the most experienced teachers to go to those schools that may be weaker or underperforming. But in effect, it's usually the regressive, the opposite, where, well, I have tenure, I'm going to teach fifth grade in this school for the next 10 or 20 years. Where I can say one example is in Japan, when we were in Tokyo, for example, teachers are moved around within the district on every 2 to 3 years, basically. So you could go back to school and a teacher's not there and she was moved to another teacher. So you're not going to have, this is a good school in the district, this is the bad school, because the teachers are constantly moving around. And there are financial transfers to make sure that the inequity doesn't exist. In the United States, on average, only 10% of a school's budget comes from the federal government. So it's really up to districts and states to stem that inequity. And another thing that they do really well in Shanghai, for example, is they have kind of sister programs. So the higher performing schools take on a lesser performing school and take over its management to elevate it.
You also talk about the respect that teachers had in these societies. Now, that's something the government, I suppose, can't really do, though the teachers could be paid more, which I think is one of the tragedies in America. We think we pay teachers well, we don't. We pay them very badly.
Yes.
What could one do about that? Because there really is this difference, I think.
So that reverence for teachers is really something that really smacks you kind of in the face when you're in Shanghai and in Japan. And on average, again, in Japan, for example, there are 200,000 applicants for 38,000 spots to become teachers. And it's as difficult to pass the bar, if not more difficult in Japan, to become a teacher. So the credentialing, the licensing is really, really difficult. And what you also see is the teachers will do anything to help this next generation of students. So I tell many stories in the book where it would be 7 p.m. at night, and whenever the house phone rang, we knew it was a teacher who was actually, I should say, calling from the teacher collaboration room that all the teachers went to, because so much of their time isn't spent necessarily in the classroom, but it's working together, collaborating through professional development and lesson planning. And in the United States, teachers spend 27 hours a week on average in the classroom, whereas the average for OECD nations is 19 hours. So that's something that we have to address as well.
So they're teaching too much and they're not spending enough time getting professionally enriched and developed.
Yes, and the other thing that happens both in Shanghai and in Japan is you have to be re-credentialed every 5 to 10 years, and that requires hours and hours of professional development, observations, even medical tests. So it's like becoming a doctor or a lawyer, really, where you can't just pass an exam once. You have to keep up your professional development.
You know, this is a very exciting interview for me, and we're going to require all of our teachers to read Clara Travell's book on world class. We'll have that. You don't have to start reading until after the Christmas activities because we got so many things on out. But it is going to be required reading for our teachers, and it is true, my friends. The American school system is failing our students. We cannot compete globally with Asia. And a large part of the reason, there are two reasons why. Of course, this was not discussed, and because it's not popular to say it, you try to dance around it. But one is that there's a lack of discipline in an American school system now. You can't educate children who need discipline in order to stay focused, because children automatically gravitate to being children. And the other item, of course, is that we have greatly infused, and when there's a lot of discipline, by the way, in the Asian school system, and we have infused gender confusion, which I think is perhaps the death knell of the American education system, by confusing children about their genders or making that a part of the curriculum to discuss genders in an attempt to proselytize and evangelize children as young as kindergarten into a sort of gender confusion about whether they are girls or boys. That is going to greatly distract from the education process of the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. And so we're number 22 on the world scale of successful schools, successful education system. And it should not be, because we in America have greater resources. And we can be number 1 if we just simply put discipline back into schools and we remove gender confusion. So I thought this would be a great presentation for us and for our teachers and for us to look. There's several other things that I thought was interesting about this particular interview with this young writer, is that she said that in Japan, for instance, that there are over 200,000 applicants to become a teacher in the nation of Japan's 38,000 openings for school. Now, there are nearly 5 times as many. In fact, there are more than 5 times as many people who want to be teachers in Japan But 200,000 want to be, but only 38 openings for 38,000 openings. I thought that was phenomenal, mainly because the job of being a teacher is such a high profession and such a quality experience to be able to put into the lives of children the things that will make them and shape them as to who they are. But our teachers, and the other thing she pointed out, the teachers in America, they move around from school to school. We have had the same teachers in the ATLAH school system now since we started. I mean, we take a teacher like Madre Butler, for instance, Principal Butler. Principal Butler has a master's degree, by the way, in education, extraordinarily educated, was one of the first teachers that started with this school system, the ATLAH school system. And she's been here, she's raised all her children here as well. Principal Butler, who has been in our school system, has a daughter in pre-med, and she has another daughter who just graduated from Fordham University and is going on to law school. I think she was accepted at Emory Law School down in Atlanta or someplace down yonder, but she didn't go there. But Principal Butler has been she's been a pillar in our school for years. Evangelist Bowman, Esther Bennett from day one was here as well. So according to this interview we just saw, that the consistency of the same teachers really helps to build a strong school environment where the students can know and depend and grow with the teachers. We have a teacher now who is in our school, who grew up in our school, started in our school. Her name is, she's a doctor in the PhD program at St. John's University. She'll be receiving her doctorate degree very shortly. She started in the ATLAH school system, kindergarten, went through, graduated ATLAH High School. She went to St. John's. She graduated St. John's in the bachelor's degree. She went back to St. John's and graduated in the master's degree program. And now she's in the St. John's doctorate program. This is Dr. Leah Hartfield, right? She started out in the ATLAH school system as a little girl. Her father is one of New York City school premier educators. Her father works for the New York City school system, and her mother worked for the Catholic school system. Go figure. Anyway, Leah she's in the doctorate program at St. John's University now, and she is, when she graduates St. John's, she's then going to take over our seminary and other educational goals that we have. But this interview points out several things, Elder LaFleur, about the consistency of teachers as well. And we are a world-class organization. The author there pointed out how there's Dr. Hartfield's family, and there's her father and her beautiful mother. Her father is a tenured teacher in the New York City school system. He's been in this church since he was born in this church. His grandmother brought him here. And that's her mother. Her mother is a director in the Catholic school system. And then Leah is in the doctorate program, PhD program at St. John's University. One of the things about ours that the teacher said, the interview pointed out, is that teachers spend too much time teaching and not growing and developing. We here at ATLAH, our practice is to take teachers annually on some place around the world. Our last trip with teachers was to South Korea. And we went to South Korea for the very reason. We took 24 students and teachers to South Korea because the South Korea school system is perhaps one of the best in the world. And then we went from South Korea to Japan. And we looked at the Japanese schools, not Japan, China, let me get that right. We left South Korea and went to China. What this does is that my belief as the leader of the school system and founder of it is that we need to continue to change, educate the teachers, and increase and uplift their environment as well. So, we've got the best school in America. There's no doubt about it. There's just absolutely no doubt about it. This year we're celebrating the first year. While we've had many successful students, we're celebrating the first year that one of our students was accepted at Yale University. So it's just extraordinary. But Elder LaFleur, all the teachers, after the Christmas, we got a ton of things that have to be done leading up to the Christmas break. But then they'll read this book. And our next travel for our students will be to Egypt. And by the way, these are all expense paid trips that we take our children to. We're going to take our children to see the pyramids, to see the Nile River. We're going to see the place of the birth of Moses, to broaden their concept about Islam, about the history of Egypt, etc. We've been to China, we've been to Ethiopia, and by the way, we're working with the Ethiopian school system now, and we've pledged a $100,000 donation to that system. So I wouldn't put my child and I would homeschool my child before I put my child in the American school system. There's no discipline, there's gender confusion, and it's a failing institution. And then in some neighborhoods, you have school shootings that are just off the chain because there's no discipline in the homes. And so young children walk in with guns. Here at the ATLAH, we don't have school, we don't have metal detectors, but all the other schools in the community, like Martin Luther King Jr. and others, you got to go through a metal detector if you're black. You got to go through a metal detector. And one of the reasons being is because some of these young boys growing up in the ghetto can be stomped down hoodlums. I mean, I'm talking about hoodlums like you ain't never seen before. So you got to stop them from bringing guns into the school. The young boys growing up in the ghettos of Harlem and South Bronx, a hoodlum, some of them, not all of them, but you have to put metal detectors out there. At any rate, thank you, Fareed, for bringing this to our attention, and it's going to make the ATLAH school system a better school system. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I am he. I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning. And I'm here to serve you with news and information.